I've seen super talented church musicians destroy their careers over these quote unquote opportunities. So if a church leader, pastor, or anybody offers you any of these things, you need to run to the hills from which cometh your help because they're designed to keep you broke. Let's talk about them. So I've been a church musician for over 30 years. I started out playing drums in a church back in the early 90s. And from there, I started playing keys and organ and bass and all of that kind of stuff. And in that process, I've also been on church executive boards and I've seen a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And particularly, I've seen a lot of the ways that churches deal with and treat musicians when it comes to money. And a lot of it really is designed to manipulate us as musicians, and we don't even realize it. And that's where we fall into these traps. And what I noticed is that there are really like three basic things that churches sort of do to try to manipulate us into playing and keeping us broke. And I want to break those down for you. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to give you the solutions for them. And I'm telling you, out of all of these three, the third one is going to be the biggest one. You will see exactly what I'm talking about when I get there. So the first trap is what I describe as this whole thing of when they ask you something like, hey, you play for free and we'll expose you to our congregation and, you know, this big conference that we're part of, and we'll put you in front of a lot of people. Basically that whole exposure thing, right? And it's funny because you would think that the exposure thing comes from like secular musicians or comes to secular musicians from secular stuff, like playing in bars and clubs and all of that kind of stuff where people are offering, hey, come play for this and we'll give you exposure. No, 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 no. It happens in the church as well. What happens is what they do is they'll come in and they'll talk up this big game like, hey, we're part of this national conference and we have all of these connections and it's bishop this and it's apostle that and we know these people, and they try to name drop and say all of this stuff and then tell you, hey, if you stick with me, if you stick with us and you prove yourself to be dedicated and all of that, it's another story, but prove yourself to be dedicated, we'll put you in front of all of these people, and then that's where the opportunities are going to come from. And if you're not really thinking, if you're not really confident in yourself, and you're like most of us musicians, we want to achieve, we want to be in front of people. This is why they're playing on our emotions and things that we want. We want to be in front of people. We want to show off our talent, and they're promising that in such a way. So what happens is our mind says, oh, okay, well, let me just get that opportunity. Then that's when I'll get paid. So you don't have to pay me for showing up to your church services every Sunday, showing up for these 3 or 4 rehearsals a week, playing 2 or 3 services on Sunday, going out for all of these evening services and traveling with you, and then doing holiday services and all of this kind of stuff. You're not even thinking about that kind of stuff. And what happens is you get trapped in that whole cycle because it never really pans out, right? We all know that opportunities of exposure never really pan out. I mean, it's the odds of it are like hitting the lottery. You may get lucky in some situations, but it's definitely not something that happens regularly. And this is the first trap. This is how they keep us trapped. It's a manipulation tactic because we're steady chasing this dangling target. I've talked about this before, but it's like a dangling target they dangle in front of us. And the closer we get to it, the more they move it. And we have to keep doing something else to get there. And it becomes this, oh, well, we're not going to have the conference this week. Or the bishop that I said that I was going to put you in front of, he quit. Or he's not the bishop. Or we're not part of this thing anymore. It's like all of these excuses. So the goal keeps moving. And then before you know it, 4 or 5 years have passed by and you've been there and you've been playing for them, doing all of this work and not getting paid. And that's why it keeps you broke. It's why it keeps us church musicians broke. So that's a really, really important one. This whole exposure, this opportunity of exposure thing, that's the first trap that keeps us church musicians broke. Now, the second one is one that I promise you're about to recognize as soon as I say these words. Check this out. Tell me, have you ever heard this before? As we grow, you grow. You ever heard that? I'm telling you, it was a long time before I really understood that this was basically a manipulation tactic. And what I'm calling this is like this whole volunteer now or play for a little bit now. And then as we get bigger, as we grow, you'll grow. Those are words that I have really come to despise as a church musician. The moment someone opens their mouth to even utter the words, as we grow, you grow, I'm like, I check out. Like, I'm done. Like, I'll shake hands up. Thank you. I'm out. Because what happens is, this is how they set it up. They'll want you to play for them. They want to hire you. And then they want to give you this lower salary than what you're asking for. So let's just say you're asking for $500 a week. They'll say, oh, well, we can give you 300 or we can give you 250, like half of what you're asking for. We can give you 250, 300. And then as we grow, you grow. Oh my God, even saying it makes me cringe, even me saying it, because it's like, what do you mean by that? So as like two more members join your church and they start giving offering or tithes or whatever, that means my check is going to go up. How soon is that going to happen? Are we looking at a year from now? Are we looking at 6 months from now? And what happens if your church don't grow? Because particularly with a lot of these smaller to medium sized churches, it's not like they're out doing a lot of stuff or marketing their church in any kind of way to help it grow. And, they're really just sitting around being reactive to everything that's going on in the world. So it's not like any of that happens anyway. So what do you mean? What happens if you don't grow? Am I going to be here for 4 or 5 years getting this half the money that I asked for 5 years ago? So let me calm down. You can tell that frustrates me a whole lot. But that it's really a big trap that they put us in, this whole sort of play for less now or volunteer now and then, get your money later. It's a trap because it never pans out. It's just like the opportunity of exposure thing. At best, they'll come to you every now and then, or not come to you. You have to go to them, by the way. They're not going to come to you, even if they grow, 500 members this year. They're not going to come to you at the end of the year. Hey, brother, we grew at a alarming pace this year, and we just want to make good on what we said. So here's an extra $100. You can expect that extra $100 to be in your check every Sunday. Now you're making $400 a Sunday, right? That never happens. It's never happened to me, and it's literally never happened in 30 years. That has not happened to any church musician that I know. But again, at best, you'll have to go to them and ask for, hey, can I get a raise? And, maybe if you're doing a good job there, they'll give you a $25, maybe $50 on a good day. And you've already been there 2 years for playing less than what you asked for. It is a trap to keep you broke. Now, let's move on to the third one. I promise you that this third one was going to be the most serious one, and it really is. It really is. So, have you ever heard them say stuff like, this is a ministry, it's not a job? You've heard that kind of refrain before, even if it hasn't been said to you as a church musician. You've heard them say that kind of stuff before, right? And what that is this whole spiritual, what I'm calling the spiritual manipulation kind of thing, where they throw like these church cliches and church scriptures, and they rearrange scripture and reinterpret scripture to mean stuff, basically twisting scripture and all of this kind of stuff, or even just using it as it is to get what they want out of you. And listen, this is the biggest one of them all, because a lot of us try to do what we're supposed to do. We try to be good. We try to, we want to be good people. We want to be good musicians. We want to be lined up and all of that kind of stuff. And they use that as a bargaining chip, as a manipulation trip to tell you you're not good. You're not being good. You're not a good person. You're not a good musician because you want to get paid. All while, check this out. All while they will call you in their office and have a meeting with you and tell you that kind of stuff right after they accept their check from preaching the same Sunday. But in some kind of way, you're not good. You're not the best musician. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not walking circumspectly. They'll call you in and throw a scripture on you. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, and all of this kind of stuff. Like, they will use all of that while they have literally just accepted big love offerings, big salary checks, big appreciation gifts of cars and trips and all of this kind of stuff that they've received. And they want to paint you as something that's not good or someone that's not good because you want to get paid for your money or for your services. It's the biggest manipulation trick of it all. And it's something that you cannot fall for. Let me tell you, they can throw all of the cliches, scriptures, all of this at you that they want to. At the end of the day, you are doing a job. Point blank, period. It is a job that you have to show up for, you have to be on time for, you have to put in work for, you have to practice and you have to rehearse for, and they continually want you to improve and get better. It's not like a day job where you go work at a company and you're doing some data entry and stuff every day. You don't have to improve at that. You just got to make sure that the data that you're putting in gets better. But let 6 months go by where you're doing some of the same songs that you did 6 months ago, or your playing hasn't improved, or the choir isn't getting better, or the praise team isn't improving. They'd be looking at you like you're crazy, but then don't want to pay you. It is the biggest manipulation trick of church musicians that we face in the book, and it's something that we cannot continue to fall for. My friends, if you're a church musician and you're doing a job, which you are, and you're good at your job, and again, don't hear me wrong. I'm not talking about if you're there just like not doing what you're supposed to do and you're messing up, you're showing up late and all of this kind of stuff. I'm talking about specifically if you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're doing the job, you need to get paid for it. And they need to pay you what you're asking for. Point blank, period. Now, let's move on to some solutions. I promised to give you some solutions that we can use to kind of curtail a lot of this stuff that we're talking about. The first thing is that you have to do to help with all of this and make sure you're getting paid fairly is not be afraid to negotiate your payment up front. Do not, hear me when I tell you, listen, do not do anything, a church service, a rehearsal, anything like that, until you have discussed terms specifically about what the job is going to require you to do, and you've talked about what you want to get paid for it. Again, I have many stories. There was another church that I was kind of auditioning for when I was in this auditioning process of playing for churches when I first moved to the city that I live in now. And I played for one for they were having a revival for a whole week. Got me Monday through Friday, every night from like 7 to like 10:30. It was like long services every night. And of course they paid me for the services, but then they didn't pay me what I asked for, but they paid me something. And then they end up not even hiring me. So they got a lot of work out of me, a lot of rehearsal time and all of this kind of stuff, that they didn't pay me for. And that was something for me that I should have negotiated up front. Hey, I'm not going to show up for this stuff unless you pay me for what I want. But even in the regular situations where we're accepting jobs and stuff on a Sunday or church services on Sunday, negotiate your terms up front. Now, listen, I'm not telling anybody to walk in a situation like that and be like money hungry and go in and just ask for astronomical figures. Don't go asking somebody for like $50,000 a week or something like that. Reasonably, if the job requires you $50,000 worth of work, of course, ask for that. But I'm talking about just normal situations. That's probably not going to be a normal situation that is for most of us. But whatever those terms are, negotiate that stuff up front. Put it in a contract, put it in writing. A lot of us musicians are scared of, contracts and all of that kind of stuff. All it is a written stuff. Whatever is talked about when you have that meeting with them, write that stuff down so you can send it to them and say, okay, this is what we talked about and this is what we agreed on. So it's always in writing. So that's the first solution. Now, another thing that's really important, this is a big solution right here. A lot of us church musicians need to learn, hear me, we need to learn when it's time to walk away from a lot of these situations. It just is what it is. A lot of us treat these church jobs and stuff like we treat a lot of our romantic relationships, and we stay in these, toxic relationships and stuff like that longer than what we should be. And trust me, I'm guilty of that too. So I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just talking about what I've learned. A lot of times we're in these bad situations and we know it's bad. We know we're being treated unfairly. We know we're being taken advantage of. We know we're going week from week, expecting them to pay for something, and they showing up late with our checks and stuff like that. We know that kind of stuff is happening, and it's a toxic relationship. Yet we're sticking there because of the manipulation tactics that I talked about earlier. Oh, I beseech you, therefore, brother, the scriptures they throw on you, and the guilt trips and all of that kind of stuff that they throw on you. I'm telling you, one of the most valuable things that you can learn as a church musician is when to get out of a lot of these situations. And there may be some short-term uncomfort in doing that. I totally get it. You may go through some withdrawal and it's like, oh man, I really want to do good. I really want to, try to work this situation out just like we do our romantic relationships. Trust me, I get it. I'm the first to point at myself to be guilty of this, particularly in the past. So I'm not pointing fingers, but the biggest thing is to learn when to move out of those situations and position yourself to where you can start improving yourself and improve your environment. Because let me tell you what the biggest risk of staying in those types of situations are with these churches. You start to become indoctrinated. You do. You start to, it's like the jail. It's what we call institutionalized with people in jail. It's like when people are in prison or in jail for such long periods of time, that becomes their world, and they become indoctrinated to that world. So what happens is when they get out, a lot of them commit crimes just so they can go back to jail. You know how that works, right? They commit crimes so they can go back to what's familiar to them. That's institutionalization. They get institutionalized. And this is the exact same thing that happens to us church musicians when we're in those toxic situations. We get institutionalized. And guess what? We start treating people outside of that institution. We start treating people like people treat us inside there. So we're toxic to people. We don't pay people on time. We do bad business. And it just becomes this snowball effect. It's trust me when I'm telling you, it's a huge thing. Know when to walk away from these toxic situations. Now, the third one is really important as well. The third solution is just learning how to set boundaries on what you do as a church musician and what they ask you to do. The very simple way to say this is just learn when to say no. This one was a huge one for me. When I tell you, there was nothing I didn't used to say yes to. I said yes to everything they asked me to do. Hey, can you be here Saturday night at 1:00 in the morning to help set up this thing? Oh, sure. I'm not tired. I'll be there. Hey, can you show up to play for this thing we just came up with off the top of our heads next Friday? Although you already have something to do with your family or something like that, can you show up? Sure. I'll neglect my family. I'll neglect what I have to do to come play for your church service that you're barely going to play me for. And the biggest danger about that one is it causes a lot of resentment. And that's what happened to me. Because what happened was because I was neglecting personal things and people in my life and, just other opportunities, I passed those opportunities up. I saw other people take them. I saw other people succeed. I neglected things, in my personal life with personal people I know. So I missed birthdays and celebrations and stuff like that, where those friendships, they didn't spoil, but they're not the same as they used to be because those people really wanted me to be friendly to them and show up for their stuff. I neglected that stuff to be at churches for church services. That is the danger in that stuff happening. I'm telling you, it just, all of this stuff becomes this snowball effect. What I just talked about with being institutionalized, because you say yes so much and you don't set boundaries, you just start doing everything and then you resent it later. So you got to start saying no to a lot of these situations. If it's something that you're not comfortable with, if it's something they're particularly not paying you for, or they're trying to throw this guilt trip on you, you know the language they use to throw these guilt trips. Just start saying no and say it boldly. Hey, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Maybe next time. I appreciate you asking, but I'm not going to be available to do that. Point blank, period. So again, those are the solutions to these 3 traps that I mentioned. So let me know what you think about these traps as a church musician. Let me know if you know of any other traps and stuff like that that we face it as well, and then the solutions to them. Jump down in the comments and let me know. I read all of the comments, and as you've seen, I do a few videos about some of the comments that we get on the channel. So jump down to do that. And also make sure, if this video is valuable to you or has been valuable to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And in the meantime, check out this video right here on church musicians. It's something else that's really important that I talk about. I promise you, you will find value in it. I'll see you in the next video.